Hello everyone, welcome to another Power Talk with Archana. The National Education Policy was framed in 1986 and modified in 1992. More than 3 decades have passed since the previous policy. Today we have with us distinguished guests, academicians and educationists to discuss the new Education Policy 2020. Power Talk with Archana would like to extend a very warm welcome to my guests here today. Please join me as we welcome Dr. Farooq Wasil. Dr. Farooq Wasil, the Global Head of Affordable Schools, GEMS Education Dubai, and the member of Central Board of Secondary Education Committee for Promotion of CBSE Overseas. He's been awarded the GEMS Fellowship Leadership for Learning. He comes across as a strong mentor, a leader, and working relentlessly to bring up the education system across UAE, India, and Africa. Also welcome Ms. Dr. Amrita Vohra, Director of Education, GEMS Schools, India, Director of Philosophy, an academician, a strong leader par excellence with expertise in reviewing 360-degree school audits and quality assurance. Also welcome Ms. Shaheen Safi, the founding principal of GEMS Indore, an academic mentor for GEMS MP schools in designing and training content for UNESCO and MHRD project Saksham. We would also like to welcome Ms. Rani Thipavazula, National Head Academics at Dream India Schools, Hyderabad. The awardee for the Best Teacher from Lions Club, Ms. Thipavazula received accolades from NCRT for innovative practices in teaching English. We welcome each of our guests and thanks a lot for speaking to us about how the new education policy will bring changes in the education system. As we speak about the challenges, the pros and the cons of the new policy will bring forward to us. Dr. Wasil, we would like to start with you, sir. Kindly help us understand what was the need of the new education policy and how different it is from the previous education policy.
Thank you, Archana, for this opportunity. Well, we know that this is the third NEP that has been floated. Obviously, the earlier two were in the similar line and direction. I'm sure there was equally a compelling vision present there. Education is evolving. In fact, I would say at every decade, there must be a revision of education policy and framework. But, policy is a guideline. Policy is, it does not provide you any guarantees at the end of the day. It provides you a broader direction. Unless education is a concurrent subject, we know, because state and center both have the say. And if you look at it, I mean, the review I have read and the expert comments around this policy, that there hasn't been much collaboration around and discussion around. And in the middle of the pandemic, when we are struggling and then mind is totally occupied with the multiple, anxieties, this has been, now floated without giving academia, without giving states, or without giving the people at the end of the day who are end users any time to react on the policy. So if education is a collaborative activity, then, it cannot be a mere statement or a policy, because we have seen what happened to earlier policies. It's not in the roadmap or the direction we set. It's the merit of doing good is in the implementation process. And we don't have a roadmap now, if you look at it. I was looking at it, it talks about universalization of school education from 3 to 18 years and getting the early years into the regular educational process, but without making it a legal right. So what happened to RT, which was far more robust, but what happened to its implementation? So the question here is, you look at some of the progressive take on this education policy, I think that fundamentally, if we say critical thinking is one of the areas of engagement, critical thinks about questioning. So how much of questioning can be done about the policy framework? So some of the steps which have been enlightened, it does not talk about common school system. It definitely needs close scrutiny in terms of its implications for the marginalized disciplinary spaces, autonomy, and constitutional values. The key shifts are that from 10 plus 2 to 5 plus 3 plus 3 plus 4 brings early years to the formal schooling system, unless class 5 mother tongue or regional languages. Multidisciplinarity, inclusive education, exit options at degree courses,
Yes.
academic bank of credits, which is transfer of credits in almost alignment with the West, opening of Indian higher education to foreign universities, dismantling UGC and All India Technical Education. Now, overhauling school curriculum, thrust on experiential learning and critical thinking, integrating the Indian education system with global patterns, universal access, develop infrastructure, innovative teaching centers, teacher recruitment framework, and training,
Yeah.
school quality assessments, accreditation framework. I mean, it's quite aspirational. But the question is,
Yeah.
what John Hattie said, the best, only powerful tool for us to change is the feedback. So where is the feedback on the existing systems, policies, and governance? Now, when Kothari Commission 1964, when the Parliament member Mr. Prasad moved the, in the Parliament, asked for a roadmap and a vision for the education, and then under DS Kothari, 17-member committee was set up, and they tabled the report in 1968, which was adopted as a policy. It was said the destiny of India is being shaped in the classroom, and how changed that classroom looks like today. Then in 68. So it's fine, it's aspirational, it's good that our legislators, our politicians are sensitive and are quite aware of the need. I can, not getting personal, I can tell you some of the very key leaders of BJP serving minister, their children are outside in the foreign universities. And yet we are talking about, bilingual education. And English education is the aspiration of every Indian. Tell me which Indian living in the remotest corner will not have the aspiration for that, his child or his children must go to English education. So therefore, I think it needs I still believe that while the intentions are good, policy is very comprehensive, but my only worry is when it comes to implementation, because having seen in the past that there has been a genuine review. I mean, if you look at during Rajiv Gandhi time, there was a review. In 1992, Narasimha Rao, government had the review. Then what happened? And in between, we had interim commissions like Mudliyar, Radhakrishnan. It's not that we never had insights on how education should move, but the will, intent, and the resources were missing all the time. And more worried is, suppose if I look at teacher now recruitment, and they're talking about that integrated 4-year program. It was also started earlier. We had the regional colleges of education. What happened to that?
Yes.
So if you look at it, most of the material is reinventing the wheel. It's not something very new.
Yeah.
And while it's fine, perfectly all right, every Indian must aspire that we must have a robust educational system that prepares you for life and that prepares you for the change in material of which era, which generation, or which part of the history we live in. But what's critical and what's most important is that if education is the preparation for life, then life is evolutionary. So it should be the education evolutionary, but the policies, resources. Look at, if I give you insight, when they had the teacher eligibility test, can you imagine what was the success rate? 91% did not qualify.
Okay.
And this is the same teachers you expect them to deliver this new mandate. So how do you address the gaps? The backlog. You have still 9 lakh teacher vacancies not filled. You have a 60% GDP being committed for this kind of, aspirational policy. If you look at last, couple of 7 to 8 years, it has already shrunk. Whatever was provided, even that has shrunk. So how do you provide? And 6% GDP was even promised then when Kothari Commission was launched. So that means nothing has moved, nothing has changed. So if you want education to change, because we have said in couple of our webinars that if you take 100 years, last 100 years, in which way the society has not changed. The only thing that has remained constant is Indian classroom. Yeah. Education hasn't changed much. So if you want this revolution to come into place, then it calls for extraordinary measures. It cannot only be a mere
Absolutely.
policy. It has to become a
Right.
piece of legislation. There has to be a major consensus between the state and the center. It has to be a law, and education should become a national entity with states. Because if you look today, I'm sure panelists will have a better insight into it. If you look at state boards, the quality of state boards and the outcome, learning outcomes from these children appearing for board classes, if you draw a graph, they will not be the same in terms of their core competencies, numeracy, literacy, other skill sets. So when you have such a huge variance and with such a diverse kind of population and economic diversity as well, I think I would say mere policy will not work unless you have a very clear roadmap and assured funding, and it should move beyond 6%. If you have to, keep the pace, if you have to catch up with the West, if you want to have the similar aspirations. And that's what I would say at the initial stage of this policy framework. I'm sure that the teasers will be there and people will start reacting to it. And it's reasonably a comprehensive document. I have nothing per se against the vision and the direction, but I have my reservations about its implementation, given the fact that we have a very checkered history of great policies, but zero reforms in education.
Right, Dr. Vasil, we really get that message very clear, crystal clear here. It's important, yes, the policy that has come forward seems to be very comprehensive, but we are looking at a roadmap. We're looking at something that can be implemented. Implementation is most important to see the right reforms happening and really happening in reality. Very rightly said, Dr. Vasil. Thanks for your lovely inputs out there. Dr. Vora, we would also like to check with you. You have been the Director of Education for GEN schools across India. Please share your inputs as a leader, as the educational leader. How do you see this, the new policy that has come up?
I think Dr. Vasu has already listed it out quite beautifully. The policy is quite a comprehensive document, but India has never lacked policies. We always had very, very forward-looking policies whenever they were formulated. The devil is in the detail, and the reality will be seen actually in the implementation. It's yet to be seen. So that is the real question mark, and that sir has pointed out. Human beings evolve. Education has to evolve. It is so what is being termed is really, really radical by many people across the media. I mean, everybody's saying it's very radical policy, too much it's changing. But if you think of it as a progressive educator, as an education leader, leading progressive schools, the ideas mentioned herein, ideas like critical thinking, moving to experiential learning, moving away from rote, all of these, and the kind of assessment being talked about, and the focus on learning outcomes. Well, learning outcomes have been there. NCERT 10 years ago also talked about it, and they've been there since years and years. CBSE thankfully has started building in certain changes, which is being the largest board, and so changes are starting at that level. Since the last 3-4 years we've been hearing, and slowly some implementation has come in. There is a huge resistance to change. It always is. As such, 2020 I think is an year of radical change for all of us. With the pandemic, education sector has anyway changed phenomenally. The deliberations around this policy were ongoing throughout last year, and a lot of this was expected, and so it doesn't seem much new. Thankfully, early childhood education for the first time is accepted, and as something that is existent in our country, and finally it's got recognized. But most of it was already there. What has changed really is that now there is this focus on blended learning. Schools and parents have realized that it is required, and it has its advantages. We recently finished a virtual student exchange. We finished a virtual student MUN, where it was done at a national level, and then it went international in no time. So the thing is, the kind of exposure that technology brings to education, can we really do away with it? Can we really still expect children to just study from some books and clear some rote-based exams and compete with children who have this kind of exposure? So that the approach mentioned in the policy is very sensible. It talks about equal opportunity, talks about universalization, and so on. But how is the big question mark? Because as Sir has already pointed out, the consensus, the parity is one big difference between states and national. It's one big difference. Then private-public partnerships will certainly need to be strengthened. It is mentioned, and schools are already beginning to adopt some government setups. But then private school education also needs some, support from the government for the kind of progressive work they're doing. Over the last 4-5 months of this pandemic, what private schools have faced is sheer apathy in the name of support from the government. Schools are doing everything. The policy I'll just quote says that teachers are at the heart of the learning process, and the condition of teachers in this country really needs to be improved. So if that is so, and the policy again, really validates that, talks about that at length, what really are we doing to the actual teachers who are putting in so much hard work and are struggling for getting the fee from parents? I mean, this is where we are. And this is what the progressive schools, who are all achieving all these, standards set in this policy, which at least the government charted roadmap listed out in the policy wants to achieve most of it by 2030 or 2035 in certain cases. It's already there. Progressive schools are doing it. And they are a big, big resource pool in this country, which needs to be harnessed well and needs to be respected for the kind of work they're doing. So this is what I feel as an educator.
No, I think you're absolutely right.
If I may add, it is evident if you look at this during this pandemic, how the state governments reacted to different challenges of private education sector.
Yes.
And the entire school management, teachers across the states were left high and dry for want of direction. Yet teachers were working more than normal hours and still living with anxiety whether their salaries will be paid or not. So this is a classical example. I mean, if we take learning from this, that if you have a situation like this, if teacher is at the center of this whole, progress and development, then how do we make a better teacher? And there are many connected issues. I would say that if you look at Indian scene, for the last 35 years, I don't think teacher curriculum has changed much. And you have today these millions of teachers engaged in teaching learning, delivering 21st century curriculum with shortage of skill sets. So, policy is fine, but, you would have gradually in these 6-7 years, which they have got a very massive mandate, there should have been very, path-breaking initiatives in terms of capacity building, which is not the case. Right to education is, I think, a watershed moment in Indian education where there was at least some guarantee to. What happened to that? How it is being executed, implemented? What is the feedback on that? How effectively it got implemented across the schools?
I think you're quite right there, Dr. Vora, Dr. Vasil. I think the teachers have really taken a leap to embrace the systems and, impart education at every level to the students. The very example that one of the teachers of the GIS has won an award for innovating teaching methodology, I think is quite an example. But I think we need to really work on what can be done more to improve the standards of the teacher so that these systems can be brought in place for them, so that the level of education in its entirety rises up and is made available to the students, and an effect to that is seen everywhere across the globe. Absolutely right there. So also we would like to, discuss about the examination pattern that has been put forward. The change in the examination pattern, has been restructured with students giving exams each year. Now they have been moved to exams only in grade 3, 5, and 8, with board exams in grade 10th and 12th will be done 2 times in a year, one subjective and one objective. We would like to check with Ms. Shaheen, what are her thoughts on this? Because we see a big time change here. How do you take this, ma'am?
So I think when we look at assessment, across, as Amrita has said, in progressive schools, assessments have been kind of re-looked at, rethought, and moved forward. However, I will speak from my experience between 2012 and 2015, when I was working with implementation of RTE reforms in multiple state government schools. When I look at assessment, I think there is a whole mindset shift that needs to happen. Assessment being the be-all and end-all of education, or marks or reports being the be-all and end-all of education, needs to change. We used to have these trainings where teachers used to say, "I have taught, now I will do CCE." So the difference between the integration of teaching and learning and assessment as a as one seems to be something that really, even now, I mean, we have spoken about the fact that now we will make the board exams a low stake exam. We will look at examinations only happening in 3rd, 5th, and 8th, right? But what about the process to reach grade 3? What about the process to reach grade 5? And what about the process to reach grade 8? What are the kind of assessment approaches that need to be put in place? What are the structures which enable authentic assessment? I mean, it cannot always fall back on a paper pencil test even then. So instead of having few, you will end up having more assessments. You know, teachers will be constantly doing unit tests and weekly tests and such tests and paper. So again, the whole approach to assessment needs to be redefined. Trainings on that. So again, I feel that teacher training, for example, leaves a lot to be desired in terms of how we want them to be teaching and assessing in the classroom is not the way we train them in government schools, especially. I have worked with about, I would say about 1,000 teachers across 5 state governments, states, in training and implementation of assessment reforms over the past 3 years between 2012 to 15. And the biggest struggle was getting them to create that shift in their minds. So again, as Dr. Vatsal said, policies have come and gone. Multiple policies will come and go. The point is, how do we implement it? What are the specific metrics that we need to put in place? What are the different ways of assessment that we need to teach our teachers, you know, the strategies for assessment that need to be put in place? Because it is all very well to say 3rd, 5th, and 8th only exams, but what happens in those classes in the interim? How is learning being moved forward? What are the authentic ways in which learning will happen, and how integral is assessment to that process?
I just
Is something, and how
Sorry,
do we
yes.
move beyond a paper pencil test? Because I think even in progressive schools, a lot of times teachers fall back on the easier way of doing it.
Absolutely.
Because other forms of assessment are not that easy. They require a lot more observation, a lot more effort from the teacher. And if you're looking at a government school teacher for that matter, then the whole, it gets even more intimidating. So I would say again, great ideas in the policy, but implementation, and I think that's where practitioners have to be brought into play. You have to get teachers and practitioners to create the roadmap, to create the detailed policy, the rubrics, the implementation plan in place. It cannot be done by people sitting in offices. It has to be done by people on the ground. Thank you.
Very right. Dr. Vora, you were adding few points on this. Please go on.
Yeah, I just wanted to add a little clarification because I've gone through the policy at length. So it's a misunderstanding that there will be assessment only in grade 3, 5, and 8, etc. Of course, we've had both exams in grade 10 and 12 always. And yes, certain additions are suggested, as in 2 chances are already there. A child can apply for an improvement in case of, if the child so desires, but in most of our Indian boards. But what is added is, and what will be further deliberated by CBSE and NCERT and so on, and maybe the states also, will be whether they want to go ahead with a semester system or not. And it's very likely to get adapted that way in a few years. But grade 3, 5, and 8, it doesn't mean that every year assessment is not happening. Internal assessment in the school will continue. In whatever way, there's nothing being said on that. And ideally, yes, it should be assessment as learning assessment for learning. And Shine has already pointed out the kind of challenges that schools face in this process. Even within progressive schools, it is a struggle. It is a tough task to get teachers to genuinely do. And more than teachers, why teachers find it tough is also because they need evidence. Parents need evidence, and that evidence creation is tough. And so all of that, so it's a big thing. So you really need to align everything and find a solution within the system, which is why it is important that people on ground do it, not people in offices. So that is where. But grade 3, 5 and 8, these used to be checkpoint system in Western education,
Right.
GCSE
Right.
for example. So this is an external evaluation, which is an add-on. It's not removal of assessment. It's an add-on. So you can imagine now, maybe schools thinking a child will be appearing for like a board exam in grade 3 and 5 and 8. Now, how these will be planned by different state boards or different other authorities, that is yet to be decided, and we will know more in due course of time. But how that really does that really align with the progressive thought that is so well projected in this policy? So it's easy to project thought, but implementation again. So supposing that assessment is checking only rote and not real competencies, then or it's completely Hindi specific. So then schools with an English medium of instruction may face another challenge, and so on and so forth. So there are a lot of question marks still to be answered in there. And all said and done, while yes, it is important to have some sort of external benchmarking. As a school, we already do. We believe in external benchmarking, and children grade 3 upwards start doing that. But quality of that will really, really matter.
Yes.
And that will have to be seen how it goes. And again, parity will need to be maintained between states.
Yeah, and
so actually that is, sorry.
Why I was saying, you see, if you ask me honestly, if there is one single parameter where I would like Indian education across the board, school and tertiary education change, is the assessments. Assessments in India have not evolved, I would say. It's no way in line with some of the very forward-looking kind of educational entities in the world. Our assessments are not credible. What will happen eventually if you have these exit points like 3, 5 and 8, you will see schools detaining children. It will become a simple principle of wastage and stagnation. Now, if the principal understanding is each child progresses at a pace, then it's of no consequence.
Yeah.
It's of no consequence to have these terminal, kind of assessments around at 3, 5 and 8, and for that matter, grade 10, 11 and 12. You see, there are a lot of things even in the policy looking at, and they're talking about 30% reduction in the curriculum. What's reduction all about? If something has to be studied well, why is this reduction process coming in? And problem is you cannot wait for some policy to come and create checks and balances. Let us say we have Central Board of Secondary Education. In these years of evolution, how did school audits move?
Yeah.
How did the process of affiliation move? And who is heading our secondary education? Some bureaucrat who has no clue about education. Are we willing to accept this kind of open criticism about ourselves? Are we reflective enough to understand what went wrong with us?
Yeah.
So if Central Board would have been a progressive board, thinking, aligning, creating, delegating, executing as many good boards in the world, today Central Board would have been taking the lead on these initiatives and reforms and implementation. So the board itself has been struggling and having inertia because there is no intellectual rigor to what board is doing. And board has done certain very stupid things, introduction of courses without any relevance, without any connection. They have come up, if you look at CCA, when it was introduced, this continuous comprehensive evaluation, CCE, now you've forgotten even this acronym as well. What happened to schools? Publishers came with those tests. So we have to, I think it's a time, this time calls for an open, unbiased, and a warrior-like approach to issues which we are confronting. We cannot hide ourselves. So for me, you see, how many educators today should be up in arms to say that why this new policy? How this new policy? What is there for us? What is my state of readiness? See, my generation is a passing generation. There's very little we can contribute, because if you look at it today, we have our own handicaps in terms of taking these new initiatives forward. So the question is, if you have a young lot of teachers, which is quite a large number, how do you propose on a war footing campaign to build their capacity so that they can support in the execution, implementation of this policy? So assessment in India is very tricky. I don't have much trust and faith in the current assessments. The data that gets revealed is not credible. So therefore, this is one of the areas which will need huge investment of intellect, time and resources to really change this.
If I may add to that, what Dr. Vasil and Amrita has said. So critically, as a teacher, and I think all of us primarily are educators, I think teachers are going kind of getting submerged under the kind of paperwork and evidences required for assessment. To make assessment authentic, we will have to simplify them. We will have to make them integral to the way learning happens. And and therefore I said, when I said that third, fifth, and eighth, you will have your your evaluations and assessments, but the process to get there. So your assessments that are happening in the preceding classes and the subsequent classes have to be very, very authentic, have to be very, very crisp. Because if you look at some of the ASA reports or the NAS reports, which talk about the education levels in India and the education achievement levels in India, I mean, you have a lot of children going to school, but the learning levels are still very poor.
Yeah.
Because we are not doing in time and authentic assessment. So it shouldn't be about filling sheets and getting grades and marks. It should be about actually looking at where the child is moving forward and learning. Thank you.
Right, very well said, ma'am. There, Dr. Vasil and Dr. Arora, your points have been well taken, and we really feel that whatever you brought forward to the table with respect to the kind of changes we need to make in our assessment system is very, very valid out there. Great. We would also like to check with Ms. Rani out here. What are your thoughts on the proposed idea of institutes like IIT to add arts and humanities for students studying sciences and vice versa? What are your thoughts there, Ms. Ma'am?
Yes,
Can you hear me, Ms. Rani?
Yes. Can you hear me, Archana?
Yes, ma'am. Loud and clear, ma'am. Thank you.
Yeah. I think this is quite a welcome move, because these are no doubt considered premier institutes. So when such is their reputation, why not we give them these courses as well, hoping that they will live up to those standards? Because there is always, especially in a country like ours, science and math always take the lead. Of course, over the years, the mindset has been changing. Humanities, arts have been once again gaining their importance. There was a time when arts was actually there were colleges and universities which had closed down some of their art sections as well.
Yes.
So I think that is very good. And once we do that, and given the higher education and the integration of subjects that is happening, that is actually proposed, I think that is a welcome move, because students who are out of universities, especially at the higher education, the barriers between the disciplines are more, and when it comes to specialization, so your scope of study is narrowed. So with this integrated approach and multidisciplinary approach, I think the students who are moving out of universities, apart from their personal accomplishment, it's very important that their positive contribution to society matters a lot. So a lot of reforms in higher education, I think, are seem to be positive, because while we talk a lot about school dropouts in higher education is also very significant, and we don't talk much about it. So the entry exit level and the multidisciplinary approach in higher education, amalgamation of the humanities with science, I think these are welcome moves.
Great. I think this is quite a holistic approach anyways. Dr. Vora, would you like to add anything there?
So subject boundaries should always be blurred. It doesn't work with specific boundaries in real life. So why teach subjects with, this is an English lesson and this is a science lesson and this is integration is anyway key. And any school, right from school, we try to have integrated projects. We try to have scenarios created where children are thinking, and that thinking will require a holistic approach, and maybe very, very clear concept understanding to be able to apply it in different situations where it doesn't directly seem relevant. So that is always something that you require in real life. And if with all education, a child is not able to do that when needed, and is expecting an answer coming out from somewhere, if a child is not able to solve a problem, think innovatively in a given situation, think out of the box, think beyond the here and now, come up with solutions, that's not really learning. So subject boundaries had to be disintegrated. What is also done within, apart from the higher education, also within schools, a multidisciplinary approach is welcome. And it is already, in fact, again, being offered by many, many schools. Again, the way we do it is yet to be seen. Again, implementation will be the real challenge. I mean, I know IITs already have a wonderful humanities department. I've been a part of IIT Kharagpur's humanities department at one point in time for courses on theory, very, very literary theory, totally literature. So which is not at all part of, the STEM bit. From STEM, this movement to STEAM and STREAM has already happened in the parts of the world. And if we are only going to focus on STEM here now, that won't work. So it's important to bring in this multidisciplinary approach. Again, the devil in the detail and the implementation. So it's yet to be seen how parents will react to it. Because, for example, with our science stream students, currently in grade 11 and 12, we offer subjects like political science or artificial intelligence and so many, or design thinking and such others. But I do find that the parents dissuade children from taking on, these subjects. No, you stick to only these three and then take maybe something that will just give you the marks. Because this obsession with the marks is still there. Or there is also, standard and basic math was introduced last year by CBSE. Again, there was a big debate and a lot of hue and cry around the implementation. And now the policy says that for every subject, there will be a standard and basic. So two levels in which you can study it. Now, you do realize as a school, you're always struggling with subject choices, because the parent says, no, my child has to take standard, and the child says, no, I have to take basic. And that becomes a very, very tough thing to imagine. We had it with one subject, now we'll have it with every subject. Maybe in a couple of years, it's going to be a task to really help children understand what they want to choose and why and how. So that counseling focus really, really needs to increase and enhance. And somewhere, unless the mindset will change, I've seen children with special needs who we know will be able to happily do, basic math. We are supporting everything else, but the parent does not recognize it and forces that child to take standard instead.
Yeah.
So there are stories like these, and they will continue. And there are many,
Yeah.
many, because this, unless the transit from school to higher education is, discussed more properly,
Right.
the obsession with marks and coaching institutes and so on, which is, all over the policy. All over the policy, you see that mentioned that, we need to move away from rote learning. We need to do away with the,
Yeah.
this with coaching institutes and so on and so forth. But that won't go away unless higher education, admissions to higher education, the opportunities available there really are aligned somewhere with the school system.
Right.
On the one hand, we're
Right,
saying,
Dr. Voda.
Archana, may I add to that?
yeah,
No,
Multidisciplinarity, multidisciplinarity also recognizes student choice. Now, having said that, student choice is not a mere statement. It is about resources.
also.
Do we have sufficient resources to offer multiple combinations for students and give them the choice of what they would like to choose in life? So that means your secondary and then tertiary education has to be in sync. There has to be a lot more funding. And then you also understand that when you introduce this multidisciplinary, say at secondary level, how many teachers will be ready to teach that kind of multidisciplinary approach to course syllabus? So
absolutely.
it's not that is the way we simplify this statement. You will give them exit routes. Okay, you will give them diploma, you will give them certificate. It has to be well thought. One, plus the experiential learning component is also a result of the resources on ground in the immediate environment and outside. So when the states will execute it, I think it's a lot more hard work, because when you say, I mean, one of the areas which we may touch eventually, they're talking about skill development from grade 6. Now, what is the intent of introducing skill development? Is it that if for some reason they don't continue their education, they will have employability? I haven't understood. To be very honest, I still am, struggling with the idea. What is the intent of introducing skill development? And how these skills, they are talking about localized environment. So what is the mapping of that kind of skills in every state we need? And there is an industrial readiness to absorb them if for some reason they fall, they're outside the school. So I think there will be far more, anxieties expressed over a period of time if educators find themselves that it's their mandate, it's time for them to speak, because we have been always at the receiving end. The liberty and the freedom of educators have been taken away systematically, unfortunately. It's for their own reason, because I also, their level of, you see, those who oppose today English in some ways, in Hindi belt, you will see there's a lot of cry about Hindi education. I think somewhere when I look at, catharsis of this is that their inability to speak English is creating their anguish against those. Let's be, I mean, I don't want to, because it's not fair. I can give you any number of data where all those who have been the propagators, who have been the champions of this, their children are in some of the good universities outside India. So, you walk the talk, you must, image and reality must go hand in hand. And unless we don't see that, and then India as it is, let us see this current pandemic. This current pandemic has taught us that you cannot compartmentalize learning and education. It needs many more things than learning your physics, chemistry, biology, or maths. So if you have this integrated approach, this multidisciplinary approach, I'm sure that children have a better sense of themselves, better sense of the world, and better sense of future as well. But to do that, it's a lot more hard work, and there has to be really a high level of commitment to resources and the will to change. It's not about, for me, if you ask me, education should be a federal mandate. Every state is at a different level of understanding and readiness. We don't know what is that. So therefore, if there's a policy on, one thing good has been in this policy, that public school education improvement has been recognized. which is very assuring, I would say. But how it is going to take forward, anybody's guess.
I'd like to
Right. I
add
think
a little bit to that,
please,
Archana.
please,
Back to your
please.
question on IIT and introduction of multidisciplinary approaches, not just in IIT, but also in other institutions of higher learning. I think I was reading up some research on the fact that, see, if you look at the economy, there are two strong pillars. One is the academia and the other one is the industry. And
Right.
to be able to, so let's say countries like US, for example, the industry kind of funds a lot of the research in universities.
Does.
So a lot of innovative products, new practices, new approaches, and kind of get researched and created and debated upon. India has not really been doing that much, although I know that IITs, a few of the IITs like Kharagpur, for example, Chennai, Mumbai, etc., are engaging with the industry for doing this. But I think a multidisciplinary approach will open up the minds of, it's a question of balance. The ability to be able to look at through a wider lens, to be able to look at challenges, let's say even any challenge, to not be insular in your approach, but to look at multiple perspectives. It is a great opportunity. As Dr. Vassal says, how well is that opportunity actually implemented? And what support is there given in terms of infrastructure, in terms of teacher capacity, in terms of policy, remains to be seen. But I think that the need of the hour is definitely to have these multidisciplinary opportunities, because as our Prime Minister has also said, that we need to have more job creators than job seekers. And the way to do that is to be able to open minds, to be able to look at people who can think critically, to innovate, to think beyond the just absorption of knowledge. Therefore, I think, and as Amrita said, in our schools, we are seeing how the STEM curriculum, for example, is actually getting children to think through looking at connections, patterns, So it's a great opportunity. And I think IITs have started in small measure. Other higher institutions should possibly do that. I was reading an amazing research report from Finland, where again, such a connect has happened, and the students really came up with a lot of amazing products. And the funding comes from these corporates. So again, the question of money also gets mitigated to a large extent. So let's hope for the best and hope that the support is there and implementation happens. Thank you.
Absolutely. We are very hopeful about it. But, all said and done with, I feel the policy is definitely very progressive. But the big question mark is it's all about counseling and making, things available to the students. They need to be counseled to what subjects are really good for them. And they need to be backed by their parents. I think this information needs to be sent out at, at a broader perspective, to all of them. They need to be really counseled well, why this multidisciplinary things have been brought forward and what good they can do to students. The backing of the parents need to be there for the students to take on those courses, these challenges to be met. We need to do a lot of counseling out there for them to understand what is good for them. And also our system is very marks driven, as Dr. Amrita very rightly said. We go for subjects which give us more marks, so instead of making it more interactive, making it more of a dialogue, making it more something which is more experiential. So I think all these changes need to be brought forward to make this change happen, which definitely is going to take a time of its own, but we can really hope for the best. Also talking about the challenges, as Dr. Vassal said, about the teachers upgradation, the upskilling our teachers when we are talking about, experiential learning, more holistic approach, more learning-based, discussion-based, inquiry-based learning. We would like to, check thoughts from Ms. Rani on this. Ms. Rani, ma'am, what are the challenges, expected for the teachers as this new system opens up a more dialogue, inquiry, discussion-based learning, giving a more holistic approach rather than the old age practices of rote learning? What are your thoughts, ma'am, on this?
Well, policies or no policies, teachers over the years have moved from the blackboard to the green board to the whiteboard to the smart board and to the smart screens. And I think this pandemic has clearly shown how they are so ready to adopt and adapt to changes.
Yes.
There is no denial that there is a dearth for quality teachers. And I think the first thing that needs to be done is the motivation that is required to bring the best into the education industry. So, well, the new policy talks of a 4-year integrated B.Ed program, which will be good if it can incorporate. We are talking of 21st century skills for students: communication, collaboration, creativity, critical thinking. All these need to go into that program where teachers need to be trained on these. So, well, a 50-hour continuous professional development is what is recommended, which is good. But I think initially a lot more will be required. Teachers who are in service will require a lot of hand holding, because the new pedagogy states art integrated, sports integrated, and a story based approach. Now, if I say story, the only thing that comes to mind is stories are meant for kindergarten teachers and kindergarten students. But how excited will students be to learn if a teacher of physics is delivering a lesson on the first law of thermodynamics in the form of a story? Now, for teachers to do that, a lot needs to be done in terms of training them, and the very mindset and the very approach that they need to take up. So more these days more happens during the in-service trainings. So if it can be incorporated in the B.Ed programs that have been suggested, I think that will be great, and we will have to do a lot more with mentor mentee programs, and a lot is required, because setting up this policy, and as the panelists know, we have been discussing so much about implementation. So how do I'm a science teacher, subject matter expert, but how do I integrate art? How do I integrate sports? I need to be told. So a lot of hand holding is required if this is to be implemented. And the 2022, what has been suggested, the National Professional Standard for Teachers. So probably the standardization with respect to all schools and all states. So a standardized policy in this respect is also, if that comes out, then I think we will get a deeper insight into the standards that will be required in implementation of this.
Very right. Dr. Vasil, would you like to add something on this?
No, I think, you see, again, it boils back to it's not that educators don't have a sense what skills teachers need to be good teachers. You see, good teachers are central to any good learning teaching processing, and great schools are schools where you have good teachers. Now, why is it that private schools become better schools than government schools, or some government schools are worth quoting in terms of their good teaching and learning? It's all about teachers. But we are not talking about few teachers. I will give an example. If, let us say, Jammu and Kashmir state has got 140,000 teachers. Now, under 140,000 teachers, if you look at the educational spectrum and qualifications, they are at huge variance. Middle school, earlier on when they have done middle, they were appointed teachers. Matriculate teachers, +2 teachers, graduates, postgraduates, PhDs. So if education is a national goal and outcomes of learning have to be uniform, how would you expect that this spectrum with varied educational expertise, background, skill sets to deliver this national aspiration? One question is this. Second is what you do with them. Over a period of time, across the states, education being on a concurrent list, states have also used as a political tool to generate employment, favors. That is the truth. The question here is, should we accept that it's a reality of across the schools today? We don't, I'm telling you, if there is an insight, the national eligibility test, 91% did not qualify. What does it mean?
Yeah.
Is it not a reflection? It's their own test. And it wasn't very high standardized kind of an eligibility test, what we have in other countries. It was reasonably customized, scaled up, in a context developed, yet you have 91% not qualifying. What do you talk about that whole bandwidth of teachers engaging in the learning teaching process, going to be champions of new policy implementation? That as an educator asking myself, how will I deliver this new aspiration, new mandate with this existing set of teachers? And if that is the case, what it needs as part of resource, mobilization, workforce to achieve these desired goals quickly. Because see, you cannot have a lag. As I'm speaking to you, there is a 100-year gap between developed and developing world on the learning outcomes. So if I am at this level, so I need a radical kind of reform and approach and resources. I'm telling you, like a war footing campaign, that we need to change education. A multiplicity of approach. I would say when you have 4 years integrated teacher training program, include 2 years leadership, educational leadership program. Bring in the best brains, because you need the champions who can at the end, because what has happened, education over a period of time has attracted least of the talent. And if there was a talent that has been marginalized, compromised, because they never had a voice.
Yeah.
So it's very unfortunate, but we have to be optimistic. Lessons have to be from Noah's Ark. We will sail together. I'm sure cheetahs were on board. So was the turtle. So that's how life is. So therefore, for me, the take is that this new policy, unfortunately, there hasn't been much, deliberation. It is the educators who must really start asking questions. The problem is their silence is endorsement of their incompetence, their lack of courage and conviction to question, and then compromising the future of young, bright children who have same aspirations what children have in the most developed world.
Absolutely. Very rightly said, Dr. Vasil. I think there is a lot of work that needs to be done on that level. As we take our next question, our last question for this discussion, we would like to open this question to all the panelists. The question goes as, with multiple entries and exits options available for the students in the new education system policy, student credits will be transferred to academic bank credit. How would all of you like to decode this new process that has been put forth? We would like to start with Dr. Vora.
Well, this again is one of the systems that has been there in many, many universities across the globe. And if we do bring in the semester system, the transfer of credits is something that should happen. Ideal thing to do with higher education in this multiple entry exit would be to make mandatory some kind of work experience and relevant work experience and some project relevant to the learning to be done during that work experience, and to assign some credits to those as well. Then the real integration happens. So in many universities, it is mandatory to have that, and only then you get to the next level, and so on. So some kind of integration of this nature is much needed, and if it can be built in, it is a welcome move. Again, what is to be seen is the industry ready for a child who picks up a diploma after 2 years, or a child who picks up a certificate after 2 years and wants to exit and get into a real job and make a living after that, and what value will it be? Otherwise, this will again be something just on paper, and children will continue to finish the education that they would rather quickly do and then get into the job market. So some such building in of industry and blending of industry and academia, as Shaheen also earlier pointed out, is very, very key here. Otherwise, multiple entry exit, well, the possibility was there earlier too. It was just tougher maybe, and it may become easier with the new policy if all universities take it on. What is also yet to be seen, AICTE and UGC are being integrated into one body. So what kind of regulatory system format will be really there? And at least now we have a Ministry of Education in the country. With the renaming of MHRD,
Yes.
at least have a genuine, actually, Ministry of Education. So maybe that by itself could have a positive impact. But all of this is a deliberation is yet to be seen.
Yes.
What will, again, how it will pan out is there are too many loopholes, as there have always been, and there are too many question marks, right? So,
Very rightly said, Dr. Hora. Very rightly said. I think we need the support of the industry here to make sure that, if there are multiple entry and exit options available for students, will they be absorbed in the right job market for them to make a living for their own and a good, respectable living? Absolutely right. Dr. Vasil, what are your thoughts on this?
You see, in the West, in the secondary stages, they have these mandatory work experiences, so social engagement.
Yes.
But it's evolved, it's connected. Everyone knows that these children have to be. So there's a state of readiness, there's an agreement, there's an understanding that for country to move forward, for children to progress, these are very important tie-ups and engagements. Now look at states across in post-secondary or during the secondary course, when they pursue the secondary courses, how many states can guarantee them placement or work experience?
Right.
Simple as that. And this is what I say, the mapping, when they are talking about skill development, other things, these are a lot of issues around this skill development. Because if Kothari Commission would have been implemented in letter and spirit, India would have taken over China today, because there was a heavy bias on vocationalization. And secondary education was to open multiple options. And what we did, we compromised everything, fragmented approach, physics, chemistry, biology, maths. Then there was no much in terms of commerce. When I was a student, commerce was not seen as a good subject, to be honest with you. It was seen typing, shorthand, then some management course, very little. So that is our understanding of how we have compartmentalized education, thereby reduced the complete vision. It was blinkers up, you cannot think beyond this. And that's the parent orientation. And what has happened over a period of time, some of the, I wouldn't say very bright, as some of good students scoring better marks went into some of the professional streams, and some of the students who otherwise would have been very intelligent had less marks and moved into teaching attracted the least. And then our own pride gone. You see, what is happening today, young, when they come into educational domain, they have similar aspirations what a doctor, engineer, or else have. And I can assure you, there's more secured future in education than in medicine, than engineering. But to do that, when they see around the ecosystem, they get frustrated. Because the people like us who are corrupt over a period of time in practice and understanding don't allow them that space.
Right.
So it's fine. It's perfectly all right. But question is, what is the groundwork today available that all my secondary students will have compulsory placement, work experience, social experience, visiting, homes, helping people around. You see the shift in education that is taking place. One is that our children, when they graduate from school, they must have a startup mind. They should not have a mind that I'm graduating and getting into college, get degree and get employment. This was correctly when Rajiv Gandhi said, the degree should be delinked from jobs. Because you cannot, today, the problem with our educators is when they get educated, they see it as a guarantee and a right to employment.
Yeah.
Not ready for you Peter, you will have lakhs of engineers sitting without any skill sets. What a waste of human resource and energy.
Yeah.
So it is something which we'll have to reflect. And I think this is, again, when I say that state and center, they have to do a lot more hard work in terms of bringing this rigor and this regimentation for people to implement this policy framework to ensure that we reap the benefits and the fruits of this new vision and direction, it's fine. Otherwise, I'm sure that we had previous NEPs which were more aspirational, more relevant and contextual to the time at that point in time, and with some very assured direction, I would say. And let's not, forget the past, because study the past if you divine the future. You must recognize stalwarts in education who have really done good, and we have a lot of concerns today on the autonomy of education.
Yeah.
In the university needs a lot of freedom, but the kind of control mechanism that is being suggested could compromise that autonomy.
Yeah.
That liberal, you see, good thing is that liberal arts is being recognized now, but that liberal space is shrinking. It's unfortunate. So therefore, sometimes you hold yourself, yet you have the great urge to say this. And I think we need to look at this with open mind without holding any preconceived notion, bias or prejudice. And that's why I said it's very comprehensive. It's very encouraging. It's reassuring that our leaders are thinking about education, but lessons have to be learned from the past. So I will give you some, like take this one area. 6% of GDP has been the stated goal since 1960. 6%. From 1960, we have been thinking that we must have 6% of GDP spent on education. Yeah. Since May 2014, our spend to GDP ratio has been falling. In 2012 and 13, 3.1% we spent. It fell to 2.8% in 2014 and 15, and registered further dip to 2.4% 15-16.
Yeah.
This is the truth. Now you want to hide, and then you say, no, we are doing a great job. I think that's something we need to reflect. See, our generation, I keep saying, we have done the greatest disservice to our young people. I swear, it's my conviction and belief. Today, the life they are going to live is compromised to a large extent because we have been dishonest. We created an ecosystem that is not friendly. We, vandalized the natural resources. We created hate, no empathy, no compassion. It's our doing. So we have failed this generation, and we have to take correction, be honest enough to accept that we were not good. The other day when somebody asked me, you are a good example, I said, no, don't make me your example, because we haven't done much good for you. But you can learn from our experiences, because our experiences are far more greater in terms of bad experiences than good experiences. So learn from our experiences. I think that's how it is. I think we are still optimistic about things. We are not given up. I'm sure educators have risen to the challenge in the most difficult times with very, little state of readiness, but they have come up, and we must celebrate, their courage.
Right, Dr. Vasil, thank you so much. For your words here. We're very optimistic about whatever has been put forth in the form of a new education policy, and we look forward for those changes to get implemented. A lot of brainstorming out there. Thanks a lot. Now we open this conversation, this dialogue to our guests who have come. We have a question that has come from Dr. Hamid about vocational education in 3 languages. Can we speak to Dr. Hamid here? Dr. Hamid, can you hear me? Dr. Hamid, are you there?
Yes, I am very much here.
Dr. Hamid, what's your question, please?
Yeah, there is no question excepting thanking my very old colleague Vasil Saab. I could see him and meet him and listen to him. We were in the Gulf Council, and we had heard him number of times taking workshops, addressing the principals' conferences. Thank you, Vasil Saab, once again.
Thank you so much.
As usual, you always stimulate thinking process of educationists. You just don't accept and go with kind of routine. I just agree with you that we have Indian Administrative Services. I am from the Kendriya Vidyalaya Sangathan. Of course, very lucky to have been served Gulf Council and stayed worked with Vasil Saab for some time. Indian Administrative Service is there, Indian Foreign Service is there, Indian Forest Service is there, Indian Railway Service is there, all services. But Indian Education Service, which has been recommended in Secondary Education Commission, has not taken any shape. My department with 1,200 Kendriya Vidyalayas in India is always ruled, okay, nothing wrong, by an Indian Administrative Services officer, not by the principal. The person who understands what is chalk and talk, what is homework, classwork, project work, assignments, never goes up. I fail to understand, and I really appreciate Dr. Vasil hitting on that point, that always somebody else of different line of profession, different thoughts. These people come and okay, they go in their direction. My point here was vocational education. When Bhagavati Commission recommended work experience, all Kendriya Vidyalayas, at least central government controlled schools, we started chalk making, agarbatti making, phenyl making. Children were enjoying and doing. But Vasil Saab ka ek strong point I want to refer once again, that parents' acceptance. Some of the parents used to come and ask, I want to make my son or daughter a doctor or engineer. What is that you are making? Chalk piece bana rahe ho, and you are getting iron box repaired. We don't want a plumber or we don't want that kind of skilled person. We want only doctor or engineer. So Bhagavati Commission's report, work experience was changed to SUPW, socially useful productive work. Work experience, which was compulsory component after Kothari, was put in shelf. Then what happened? Socially useful productive work, all of you, I think you know, children used to say some useful periods wasted. When we were doing wonderful work, at least in some model institutions, Kendriya Vidyalayas, it has been removed. Coming to three language formula. Now already you might have heard one or two states in the south, they started cribbing, saying that why three languages we have to study, and you other part of the India, you study only two languages and you want to rule us. This was the question. Yesterday NDTV had a lengthy discussion on that. So how are we going to tie up all these things? And I really appreciate GEMS Group and particularly Archana Garg for creating this kind of discussion and generating light. Of course, a bit of heat wherever Vasil Saab is there, that heat comes. But here he has controlled very much, and he has only given us the warmth. Thanks to Shaheen Madam for your inputs. I was very keenly going through. I'm just fresh, retired International Indian School, Indian Embassy School, Saudi Arabia, with very close to 10,000 students and 500 teachers. Of course, proudly to proclaim that I am a national awardee. So I was very keen to listen to all of you eminent panelists. Also, particularly Dr. Amita Madam, having heard you elsewhere also, and my own colleagues uh, participating, enjoyed very much, got very good cues and points from you, particularly when Amrita Madam said how the children wants option of basic mathematics. Already we have faced this, and parent forces them to take standard. And Vasil Saab repeated maths, physics, chemistry, maths, physics, chemistry. My child gets only 33 marks in CBSE and qualifies, but parent says study only mathematics and get into engineering. So these are the ground realities we face as teachers and principals, and people sitting somewhere in ivory towers, in AC rooms, have given the policy. But what best is there in that? We are searching and we are trying to take those best points. best points are multiple entries, multiple exits, and breaking the barriers like only top cream takes what is that science group, MPC group, and remaining children go for commerce. और बचे कुचे हुए लोग जो है humanities में जाते हैं. This I think idea will be removed by this new education policy, because there is a suggestion that I can opt maths, physics, and geography also, or maths, physics, Indian history. Whatever I want combinations I can choose, but how far it is going to be successful and all practicable ground level things we have to see. Once again, I thank that I too got opportunity, Archana madam.
Thank you, sir. Thanks for coming, sir.
To all the panelists, and particularly to my good old friend Wazil Saab. I met you maybe after 2 years gap. Thank you so much. God bless us, and let us continue to serve and in the capacity as principals, as directors. Now I have taken up a group of schools in Hyderabad, serving them as the academic director. I too need to understand from Wasil Saab, Archana madam, and Amrita madam, and Rani. Rani also joined giving us her inputs. Thank you so much. God bless you.
Thank
Over
you.
to you,
Thank you, Dr.
Archana madam. Over to you.
Thank you so much. We have our next question coming from Miss Manju. Miss Manju, can you hear me? Miss Manju, are you there?
Yes. Very happy
All right.
noon.
Kindly
Yeah.
Kindly introduce yourself, ma'am, and your question, please.
Yes. A very happy day to all the panelists. A wonderful platform. Very transparent, and which gave lot of quest for learning. And I'm being from the senior leadership team member, but I grade myself as senior learning team member. My question to the panelist is, I'm from Indian High School, a group of schools from Dubai. My question was that this policy is that is National Education Policy of 20 says that no language will be imposed on any student. Do you think that it's kind of a voice and choice given? And having said that, if language is not a barrier, then how do we see the higher education envisioned in this NEP?
Thank you, Ms. Manju. Dr. Vora, would you please like to answer this question?
Yeah, so this is the kind of controversial bit in the policy. I think throughout last year, a lot of deliberation on this particular aspect has gone on. And currently, ever since the policy has been released, a lot of parents are anxious also about the whole idea of mother tongue to be used as medium of instruction till grade 5, and the policy says preferably till grade 8. And English becomes only a subject. When we look at the country like India, English is the only language that sort of binds us.
Right.
I'll take a very simple example of this domestic help whose son is in a village near Calcutta in Bengal. The child has studied in Bengali, knows Bengali,
Right.
and understands little bit of Hindi. Now, she's moved here to the north of India and in Delhi, and she really wants to move her child because there's no one else to take care of the kid there. She wants him to study higher education and everything from here. But how is her question? Because how will he manage anything in any other language? He'll have to learn Hindi, he'll have to learn English, which is all going to be very, very tough at this stage for him. So it's in India, the role that English plays is very different, and that's somehow been just totally relegated to the background. What will continue? 3-language policy was already there. In grade 6 to 8 or middle school, we already had a 3rd language introduced. In many states in India, there was the 3rd language already in grade 1 and upwards. For example, in Punjab, Punjabi was pretty much a compulsion, and
Exactly.
similarly in southern India, the languages in different states were compulsion right from grade 1. So this has been there. So there is a lot of confusion around this. And I think to mitigate the confusion, the only thing all educators, when reading between the lines in the policy, have figured that most of it will really be implemented by government schools. The schools which are in English medium schools will continue the way they are, already continuing, already introducing one foreign language, already introducing the option of Sanskrit or whichever regional language and so on and so forth. So all these are already there. And already in middle school, some of it were needed in different states, that's not changing. And yet,
Correct.
this is just the national policy yet. So let's not forget that CBSE is yet to deliberate after that. ICSE is yet to deliberate. NCERT is yet to give its own perspective. And different states are yet to come back with their model. So that may vary in multiple ways. So we cannot yet say, okay, this is final. So I think it's a wait and watch, and nothing radical seems to have really changed
Really,
as
correct.
far as private education goes.
If Archana, you give me one, just 30 seconds, one more
Sure.
question related to it. Do you
Please go
think that,
ahead.
ma'am, and it's open to all the panelists, when we are framing these type of education policies, this is what I thought of, and I would just like to, if you can throw some insight. One gentleman, Mr. Hamid, told that there should be, education officer, the way we have IAS. Rather, I would suggest that we should have a student body, parent body, because these are three most important stakeholders when we are drafting these type of policies, and the counseling, career counseling department also, so that it's nice to say that to de-link education from employment, but at the end of the day, we have to see somewhere ourselves settled. So what are your thoughts on it? Do you think that while drafting or while presenting this education policy, there should have been different offices representing student body, parent body, and different schools representatives?
They have
Dr. Vasil.
they have circulated and said we have received the feedback based on that. But the question here is, you see, anything which is random lacks accountability.
Exactly.
So unless you don't have people, the stakeholders taken on board and asking them that what do you think about it, how well this is documented, how well it can be implemented, what are the bottlenecks we have in implementation process. That has been the tragedy of many policies around, and especially for the last 6, 7, 8 years. Because of the political bandwidth and the political influence and power they have, perhaps that's not needed now anymore. Otherwise, I think education, especially, I would say, not many other areas, but I would say education is at the heart of everyone, and it is the live wire of our existence. So therefore, it cannot be left so vague. So we have to have stakeholders on board to understand that what it means or how you're going to execute. At the end of the day, it is people like you who are going to implement it, execute it. And when you don't have clarity, your feedback is not taken, you are not asked, then it is an imposition which you have to do it. And we had such impositions in the past as well. What kind of results it has produced?
Yeah.
If you look at assessment, if CCE was the answer to credible assessments, then we should have by now evolved. We should not have had examinations at multiple entries. We should not be crying that we had no grade 10 exams, so we can't announce the results.
Correct.
So this is because we have not been allowed to question. And in going future forward, when you want to move into future with this kind of vibrance, the future demands questioning. And the very area is killed, subdued. No questions asked. So what do you have next? Can you ever ask CBSE? I keep asking this question. Can you ever ask CBSE that if your examination system is so credible, why my child, who is the topper in the CBSE, cannot get automatically in the IIT?
Right.
Why are you holding this examination? Because
the package is totally broken and shattered.
Yes, it is, and there's no acceptance of the fact. One question which is not taught by rote, if it doesn't feature in the question paper, there's a hue and cry across the country that out of syllabus. So what is this examination all about? Where is the accountability? See, Indian educational system is not accountable on the outcomes, neither the state nor the center. There is no embedded accountability. So policies per se we will implement, we have no choice. But Who is accountable? Is state accountable if children fail in their examinations? They don't have necessary outcome learning by the time they graduate from the school, universities. Look at today professional colleges. You have at least lakhs, I would say even a couple of millions of these professional graduates coming from engineering, other colleges, zero employability. You think a state does not have accountability towards this young aspiring youth who is languishing, does not know what to
the
do?
skill gap is widening. I mean, to say,
Absolutely.
we are not matching the global trends then.
There's no sense. That's what I said. This is a disconnect.
Yeah.
What we do in the colleges, what happens outside the world. You see, today in India, let's be frank about, if you want to get professional plumbers, where are they? Professional carpenters, where are they? It's a, apprenticeship learning model still going on. Father was carpenter, son is carpenter, his son becomes carpenter. And in rare cases, if they had the good fortune of getting into education, they moved from there. So work as the dignity of labor, professionalism, high proficiency skills, missing. And even now when they are talking about the skill program from grade 6, I fail to understand when we are talking of 21st century skills, that is embedded into teaching learning process. Are you developing this skill program to get them outside? For some reason, if they leave school, you will have employability for them? That's what you want.
Then I think what Dr. Amrita told, that we need to go for the reverse integration, see what the higher colleges are in aligning or in alignment with what school is proposing.
Backward planning. India, we are not there to do forward planning because we are fast behind and embracing the future with a lot of optimism without knowing that what we have inherited. That's what's happening around.
Absolutely, absolutely. So the skill should meet and match the global trends. Absolutely. Wonderful. Thanks a lot. Thanks a lot. It was a very nice session. Yeah.
Thanks a lot, Ms. Manju. Do we have any more questions from the audience, please, from our guests? Dr. Hamid seems to have a question. Dr. Hamid, can you hear us?
Yes.
What's your question, Dr. Hamid?
Just to thank you all for creating this forum and also inviting us. There was no specific question, and I just thought I should thank you before I exit. God bless you all, particularly the GEMS group, Wasil Saab, Amrita Madam, and you, Archana Madam. Thank you. God bless you all.
Thank you, sir. Thanks for coming. Do we have any questions? Do we have any other question, please? Okay, I think we have no question from the audience, but we would please like to thank all the audience who has come by and heard our panelists brainstorm and talk about this very important new education policy. Thanks a lot for everyone, for all our audience out there. Thanks a lot as we exit this meeting now. Thanking all our panelists. Thank you, Dr. Wasil. Thanks, Dr. Amrita, Ms. Shaheen, and Ms. Rani. Thanks a lot for coming and speaking to us about this. I think this has been a very important and a great conversation, very open, very transparent. We really loved it. We thoroughly enjoyed. Thanking each one of you at Power Talk with Archana. Thanks a lot.
Thank you, Archana, for being an anchor, and it's a good initiative. Thank you.
Thank you.